in the 80s.
Welcome to another episode of the Dawn of Shades. I'm your host, Gia Scott, and today is June 8th, 2010, and this is episode 412. More about this program and the guests that have provided us with such fascinating conversations can be found on our website, www.exogenynetwork.com. The Dawn of Shades always tries to bring interesting people right to the audience to hear about both new and old ideas. We focus on the people, places, and ideas that don't make the mainstream news, the sorts of things that are frequently labeled as alternative or paranormal. For the show tonight, if you would like to have a question asked, you can email me at gscott@exogenynetwork, and if my computer cooperates, I'll even get it. Or through the virtual auditorium on Pal Talk by text. I do monitor the email during the program, or try to. So if you're listening outside of the virtual auditorium and would like to have a question answered, please email it to me, and I will ask the question for you. In the virtual auditorium, just put it into text, and I will try and catch those screen scrolls. And if I don't catch it the first time, feel free to repeat it again. For those of you who are listening on a podcast, go ahead and email me. I'll try and get your questions answered for you as well. And for those who like to feel connected, you can find me on Facebook and Twitter. You can link to me there. There's a Dawn of Shades fan page on Facebook. You can look for that too. And for the readers and foodies, check out the articles and blogs. You'll find some material that might interest you there too. Now, we live in a tough economy and ever-changing world filled with technology, and too often, too many of us are feeling lost, cut adrift in a sea that we have no idea how to navigate. We may be drifting from job to job, barely getting by, and absolutely miserable. We may look very prosperous and still be very miserable in the career that we've chosen. We feel trapped or we feel lost. There's no escape. There's no map to help us navigate, and there's no light at the end of the tunnel except death. For we also have no retirement or faith that Social Security will even exist. We see our lives as unending chains of days of drudgery, of just continuing on and on with no relief. And the idea that possibly we could have a career that actually appealed to us, that we enjoyed and had a good time with, is as big a pipe dream as any of us can possibly imagine. Tonight's guest is somebody who's saying, hey, that really can be something that can happen for us. She's what is called a career intuitive. And tonight we're going to find out what it is she does, how she does it. She's also written a book, and my computer has crashed, so now the book title is completely gone from me. So, Sue, can you help us out with that, too?
Hey, Gia, it's great to be on your show. The name of my book is I See Your Dream Job. A Career Intuitive Shows You How to Discover What You Were Put on Earth to Do. And my website is www.careerintuitive.org.
So what exactly really is a career intuitive?
Well, as I explained in my book, I have been intuitive my whole life. I actually grew up in New Orleans, and my mother was French Cajun, so it was in my blood from the beginning. And I was always the child who had the dreams that I'd come to the breakfast table and say, you know, we were driving down such and such a road, and we hit this green truck with double doors and a padlock, and my family would laugh at me, and 2 days later we'd be on that exact road, and that exact truck would be in front of us, and I would scream, don't hit it, it's my dream, and, you know, my father would put on the brakes and avoid a collision. And that happened so consistently, in my childhood that it's funny now. My high school friends are we've come back together after a 40-year high school reunion, and they're all telling me stories now that I didn't know about how I would totally freak them out in high school by saying that something was going to happen, and it would happen, and they would all go in the library and whisper about me. So nice to know 40 years later, but the thing is, I was always the weird kid, and yet I was always trying to fit in and be normal. I was Catholic. I grew up in New Orleans. My father was from a wonderful New Orleans family who actually my grandfather ran the ferry boat across the Mississippi River until the 50s or the 60s when the bridge was built. So it was a very, engineer-type family from my dad's side, and I really wanted to fit in and be practical and normal. So, I went off to college to be a journalist, to be a writer, and of course that skill came in later when I started writing books. And in college, to work my way through college, I became a career counselor. I wandered into the Career Counseling Center in the 70s, and I loved how they were helping students figure out what they were going to do when they left college, and I realized that I had a real knack for talking to somebody, listening to them, seeing them, and suddenly kind of just seeing their future unfold in front of me. And as I would make suggestions from those visions that came to me, the person would light up and go, "Oh my gosh, yeah, that's my dream. But how do I make that happen?" And so I learned in my 20s that I had that gift. But it was years and years later. I went through many personal reinventions, including the death of my husband when I was 29 and the death of my best girlfriend and my father, a whole lot of losses that woke me up to the complete belief that we are spirits on a journey here, and that it was my mission to help people see the great potential of the journey that they came in to experience. And that's what I do in my work today.
Well, when you think about it, the journey that we're here is really what we're all about. And, when I talk about being lost or adrift, like in my own case, okay, I was hurt last fall in a work injury. My recovery has been far slower than what I had ever had my worst nightmare. I thought when they said 2 months, for this or whatever, I was like horrified because I thought, I should be back to work in a couple of weeks at the worst. Well, now it's June and I'm still not, and now I'm becoming concerned that I'm even going to gain, full use of my arm again. And so, you're kind of going, well, if I can't go back to my old job, what am I going to do? I've already drifted through more careers than many people have in their lifetime and never really found a niche. I mean, I do things pretty well no matter what I choose to do because I've got a basic skill set that works, in many places. But if I knew what I was going to do next, I'm getting close to that magical 5-0 mark. How long do we want to drift? Before long, I'll be retiring.
Well, Gia, let me just jump in here because you're just saying all the things I love hearing. I work with clients all day long, and this is what they say, exactly the things you're saying. And first of all, we are all here on purpose. We all come in on a mission. That mission is encoded in our vibration, in our cells, also in the numbers in our date of birth, according to Pythagoras. You have intuition that's also been nudging you, telling you what that path is. And because you were injured, I talk about this a lot in the book, when we're off path and we need to reinvent, our soul will nudge us, and if we don't listen, we will manifest an illness or an injury to get us to reinvent.
It's really strange because I got hurt picking up a 15-pound dog. Now, I have raffled with horses and cattle, bales of hay, big boxes of rocks, huge loads of rocks, all sorts of really heavy things. I have never injured my shoulder.
Well, tell your soul that you got the message and that you're not going to go back to that old career, that you're going to move forward and you're going to listen to what I have to share with you about your path, because I hope the listeners know that what I do is I take a person's birth date, I meditate on it, I get visions and feelings from it, and I help them see the path they came in on. And Gia, you gave me your date of birth before we started, and you are on the Aries 22 Master Soul journey. Now, let me just say there are 2 Master Soul paths. One is the 11 and one is the 22. Just so happens you are a 22 Master Soul. Means you'll never fit in. You'll always be a bit different, because you are here to step up to some very enlightened work of helping the world look at its problems from a new enlightened perspective. You've been doing that beautifully on your show, but you've been getting the paycheck from a job that wasn't quite living up to that. That's the change that happens this year and next year, is you go through a reinvention that allows you to make your full-time living in this way of enlightening people about their lives.
Uh-huh. And, well, you know, the idea of enlightening people's lives is interesting. Translating it into a career could be rather tricky, though.
Well, that's what I love helping people figure out, is those baby steps. So,
yeah.
for example, for you, you know, I'd go back and look at several of your turning points that you've been through in this lifetime and help you see the choices that you made at each of those 9-year transitions. According to Pythagoras, we have 9-year reinvention cycles. And you remember Pythagoras, he was that guy who created the number system that we still use today. Well, he also said that in our numbers, every number not only has a quantity, but it has a meaning, a feeling. So, for example, the number 4 doesn't mean just 4 apples, according to Pythagoras. It means hardworking, determined, strong, physical. That's the lower vibration of your path. When you're just working so hard, being so strong, being so lost in the drudgery, that's more of the 4 energy. The 22, on the other hand, for your path, which is kind of hidden in your date of birth, and I explain that in my book, but it meant that when you came here to do your great work, you were going to wait until you're ready to step up to the 22, and until then, you'd probably be stuck in that 4 hard-working vibration. That's why picking up a dog that weighed almost nothing was the final straw. And your soul said, hey, it's time to step up to that bigger work. And so for you, you know, first of all, let me say you have a gift for writing. I know nothing about you, but that came across right away in my meditation on you. Second of all, you've already got a radio show that shows you know how to interview people. And I'll just share that Oprah is a 22 also. So that should start to give you some ideas about some directions to go in. I'm curious, did you ever, when you were growing up, did you ever think you might want to be a writer, a journalist, anything like that?
A writer, yes. A radio show, no, absolutely not. I was a stutterer. I am most people don't believe this, but I am painfully shy. I do not like to talk to strangers. So what do? I talk for, you know, the radio show. I've done a lot of public speaking, and, you know, people are like, you can't be shy and do that. I said, look, if you're afraid to talk to one stranger, 100 is no different. Yeah, and that's really how I look at it. It's almost like when I do public speaking, another personality, I have a split personality, I guess, another personality takes over. I'm not really doing it. It's not really me.
Right.
You know,
well, that's actually how everyone does it. I mean, when anybody gets up to speak, they really are just opening themselves up to let the higher message come through them if they're doing it right. And when you look at any of the great metaphysical teachers, Deepak Chopra, Michael Beckwith, all of these people who are out, Marianne Williamson, that's how they speak. They really do get up there and open themselves up to channel in this knowledge that helps everyone evolve. And that's part of your gift, Gia. And, you know, baby steps would be things like, you know, start working with clients one-on-one, take some training. I would send you a bunch of websites to look at that offer training. And I offer my own version of career intuitive coach training, so I teach people to do what I do. And you start seeing clients, helping them move forward in their lives, and then that starts supplying income. And then you build your radio shows, your media events, your speaking gigs, you write your book, you get your articles published, and you take it down the 22 path.
Yeah, it's interesting to listen to you talk because it certainly sounds more agreeable than taking up medical data entry. I even tried being a dental assistant.
Yeah.
I was pretty good at it, but I discovered I don't like dentists.
Let me just say
problem,
something.
you know?
Just because you can do something doesn't mean it's what you're here to do.
And even you can be good at something, apparently.
Right. The world
because
is filled.
See, a lot of these things were very easy for me to excel at when I was doing them. I just really hated doing them.
The world is filled with people who are really good at what they do and really miserable because it's not their great work. So what if we all imagined or realized that we all come in here with a huge, lofty intention to live up to our great soul potential, to bring in gifts and talents from many lifetimes to bring to the world through our work, and that when we do that, that's the only time we create true financial abundance, no matter how weird or unconventional that work may be. If it's our true soul work, it will create abundance. And yet, instead, the story we're told when we get here is, nope, you got to be conventional and get a job like everybody else, get those benefits and paychecks, and just take that soul-numbing work in order to get by. And that's what most people do. And then they hit their own reinvention points, which manifest through being fired, being laid off, all sorts of things. And then we all get scared. We all do. And we talk ourselves out of taking a step in a new direction. And yet, that little voice has been whispering inside of you all along, saying, Gia, come on, take this bigger step. You can do it. You can do it. The time is now. Vibration is speeding up on this planet. You know, you've got your own intuitive guidance nudging you. One of the things I teach my clients is how to tap into your own intuition so you can hear that voice more clearly.
Well, hearing that voice and listening to that voice are not necessarily one and the same.
Well, here's the thing. We listen to our thoughts, our mind. And, you know, when we're born, we come into this realm with a left brain and a right brain. The left brain is that logical, thinking, practical, better get a job with benefits and a paycheck part of us. And the right brain that we all have, is our expanded consciousness, our creativity, our intuition, our spirituality. Guess which side of the brain is dominant in this culture? The left brain, of course, logical,
well,
practical.
Maybe I can find an excuse in that. As a teenager, I fractured my skull on the left side of my head.
And yet we all have to learn to quit relying on that left brain logical thinking, which has gotten our whole planet exactly where it is, and start owning up to our right brain, our intuition. There's so many great books out in the world about this, not only in my book, I See a Dream Job, but in books like A Stroke of Insight by Jill Bolte Taylor. Have you read that book?
No, I have read a lot of books, but I have to admit, between guess and prospective guess, I tend to stick to that, even though it's a wide variety of books.
Mm-hmm.
You know, you figure that in the mail I probably get, you know, as many as some months as a dozen, plus anything I go looking for.
Mm-hmm.
So
here's something I want you to do when you get books in the mail. This is a way of using your own intuition to guide you. Put your hand on the book and just close your eyes for a moment. Try to quiet your thinking, and I teach how to do that, but you can find your own way how to do that. Quiet the thinking for a minute. And then feel if your body starts to feel energized, if you start to feel like you might be smiling, do you feel excited? That's your intuition saying, yeah, I want to read that book. If instead you feel heavy, dull in your body, that's your intuition saying, nah, that book isn't worth my time.
Mm-hmm.
Once you start trying it with little things like that, you're going to start to get the confidence to use that intuitive voice for your bigger decisions in life. Like, should I take that job or not?
Yeah, you know, then too, okay, we're seeing a lot of unemployment. And a lot of people who were very, very employable 10 years ago, they could pick and choose their jobs, are now in a situation where they've been long-term unemployed and aren't even really getting much for interviews.
And, you know, what I believe about that is that we, as a soul group on this planet, had reached a point where we were all ready for a big shift in consciousness, meaning that we had evolved to a certain point of recognition, and we were, very many of us, miserable in our jobs because we had gone into those careers for the benefits and the paycheck, and that vibration of unhappiness shifted the energy up and created an event called an economic downturn to try to get people to reinvent and start going in a new direction towards their truer work. And I work with clients like this all the time. You know, they had the golden handcuffs at that big corporate job, and the corporate entity folded, whether it was a bank or a real estate company or, you know, even big companies like IBM. They've been through huge layoffs. And those people suddenly go, oh, my God, I've been stuffing my dreams away for so long. Maybe now is the time to try a new direction. And every client I've worked with or talked to, whenever they take a baby step in that new direction, things start opening up for them and their life gets better.
Uh-huh. Yeah, because that's, you know, for a lot of people, you know, it's now gotten to the point where they've lost their home, they've spent their savings, they no longer have any retirement left. They're really up against a choice between a rock and a hard place. They're looking at being homeless, and still there's no job in sight.
But a lot of times those people are simply, you know, kind of going through the same motions over and over again, applying for the same kind of work. I mean, you have to take these people on an individual basis. You know, I can't really make a blanket statement, but if I could talk to each of these people, as I've done for years in my work, I could help them see the opening, the idea, the thing that they wanted to do when they were younger and might have talked themselves out of, and how to get going with it now. And it's not impossible. That's the thing we've got to change our thinking about. Reinvention is required here on planet Earth, and yet we think that staying the same is how the game is played. It's not.
Well, I know that growing up as being a, as you've already noticed, a devout nonconformist, I never did, no matter how hard I tried, I never could fit in. Mm-hmm. You know, when I would try to do what everybody else thought I should be doing and whatnot, and I sincerely tried it once for about a year. Mm-hmm. At the end of the year, I was miserable.
And
I
what
still
was
hadn't
that
met anybody.
What was it that you were doing?
Oh, just the general lifestyle. Doing, you know, I never did anything except what I was supposed to be doing. Mm-hmm. You know, I was trying to conform, to be the person that everybody else said I should be. I was much younger then. Mm-hmm. And, you know, I was miserable, absolutely miserable. Did I meet anybody else's standards? No, because I think everybody could tell. I was going through the motions of conforming. Inside my head, I still was not conforming. Mm-hmm. You know, it just wasn't working. It wasn't working for me. It wasn't working for the way the world really saw me, even.
Well, if I could have talked to you back then, I would have said, Gia, you are so underplaying who you are. You are giving away your power to conventional thinking. You are out of the box. You're 22. You're a master soul here to shed new ideas on the world. Step out of convention. Get going. You have a gift for writing, for media. Step out. Own your truth. Own your voice. Don't play it small anymore.
Yeah, that's, you know, in a sense, when I think about it, for somebody like me, that's like giving me permission to do what I want to do.
That's right.
Do I like conforming? No, actually, I found that trying to do that was pretty boring. It was like turning off 3/4 of my brain.
Right.
You know, and I'm not saying that I'm smarter than other people. I'm not. It's just that I do things different. Mm-hmm. You know, I always have, you know, and I would tell people, you know, sometimes you need to just take your Christmas tree and hang it from the ceiling because then you'll actually see the Christmas tree. They would just kind of look at me. And last year, lo and behold, I was going through some catalog at Christmas time, and they had a tree designed to be hung from the ceiling.
That's wonderful.
Upside down. I thought, I should have done some more with that upside down tree. But but for me, it was a case of trying to show people there's something very, very familiar when you look at it from a different angle.
So what is your spiritual journey about, Gia? What do you believe in, about spirituality? What is your point of view?
Oh, point of view. I would say that it's been a continually evolving thing. What I thought to be true 10 years ago or 20 years ago is so different from where I'm at now in so many ways, and yet it's not. I went through my phase of being a Christian fundamentalist. I didn't fit in very well there because I had this bad habit of saying, well, what's this doctrine stuff? And they're saying, well, we don't have a doctrine but the Bible. Well, it says right here, according to this blank, blank doctrine. So somewhere somebody's got this doctrine. And, and my inability to fit in, with traditional Christianity was obvious even as a child. I was at catechism for the Lutheran Church at that time. And when we were doing the bit about communion, I didn't put it quite that way because I was a fifth grade kid. But, I said, this is ritualized cannibalism. And that's, I still look at it, this is my body, this is my blood, this is kind of gross, guys. That really doesn't win me very many popularity points either. So what would I wouldn't know which box to file myself in. I've always been one of these people because I didn't grow up, because after that incident with that particular church, they asked my mom not to send me anymore. And so I never grew up assigned to a specific religion.
So here's the question. Do you believe that there is more to the world than what you can see, touch, and feel?
Oh, definitely.
Okay, then you have a spiritual point of view. Do you believe that we are made from energy or light, or what the quantum physicists say, that we're all part of the same energy membrane flashing light in the universe? Do you believe that, or what do you believe?
Well, we're all made up of energy. That's definitely true. Whether we want to call it light, electromagnetic impulses, or the great blue goo, it doesn't really make any difference. It's still a form of energy that we are.
Perfect. Then you are you believe in spirituality, and you believe that we are more than just bodysuits bumping around in a physical world. And once you have that perspective, then you can look at your journey here on planet Earth in a very different way. In other words, this is a visit here into this dense realm, that we come from another realm, a realm that we can't see very well when we're in this realm, and we drop into this dense realm as part of a great big experiment that all humans are part of, a consciousness evolution project. And whether we believe in all the great deities from Jesus to Buddha to the Hindu traditions to on and on, there are so many divine beings, master souls, guides out there trying to help us evolve, trying to help us remember while we're down here that we are not human beings in a body, that we're spirits on a journey, helping us remember that. If we can agree on that, then we can agree on the fact that we come here on purpose, intentionally, and that we are not victims to these circumstances that are looming in our lives.
It's, when you try to, understand spirituality, I guess the way I look at it, it's like mankind has spent the last several hundred years focused on the physical. Just like a child doesn't develop in all facets of their development evenly. Sometimes a child will make great strides academically and lag way behind emotionally, or vice versa, or they may excel in some topics are areas in academics and fall behind others. We don't grow evenly. Kids get long legs and arms, and then suddenly they grow to fit them, or their feet get really big, and then they grow in to fit them. Mankind's been doing the same thing. We've been focused on the physical, the scientific, the industrial, the technology.
Or you could call it the left brain development.
Right. And now it's time for us maybe to start focusing on developing the non-physical portions of ourselves.
And
the
also
right
brain, yep. Well, I totally agree, and I think that that's what the great consciousness shift is. That's why the vibration is speeding up so much right now. That's why there are huge earthly events happening, such as the oil spill, which breaks my heart as much as anybody. I grew up in New Orleans. My family is all along the coast. We spend every summer there. I'm so brokenhearted by seeing that, and yet I also see that this is part of the quickening vibration that's happening as we shift consciousness on this planet. And over the next couple of years, there will be many wake-up calls for us.
Hopefully they're not as bad as this oil spill. I really have bad feelings about this oil spill, and I'm seeing it already spawning an awful lot of conspiracy theories. Like there was one running rampant earlier today that there's some sort of media blockade, blackout over Grand Isle. They were arresting people and forbidding photographs and whatnot. I don't know if it's true or not. I haven't been to Grand Isle. Okay, granted, it's just a few hours away. My schedule is just not going to permit me to take that 3-hour one-way journey anytime for at least a week. And, who's doing it? Nobody seems to know. It's just they. I hate the they thing. They thing makes me crazy. Is this something real? I don't know. I haven't gotten anything from anybody I know well enough to say, yes, that's true. And I haven't been there. So, what could they be having a media blackout there for? I have no idea. Grand Isle, granted, is getting the oil, and the fishing there is not happening, which is devastating for Grand Isle's economy. It's devastating for Grand Isle as a ecological section of our world.
It's so
I don't know.
It's so much bigger than that, though. I mean, really, what's happening in the Gulf is the beginning of a chain of events that really affects our entire environmental system here on planet Earth, because everything is connected in nature. Anybody who takes a basic ecology class in high school or college learns about that. In fact, I was just wondering the other day if the people who work at BP have ever had to take an environmental studies class. It seems like that should be required before you go into that field. But anyway, everything is connected, and when you look at this picture of this oil coming up from the bottom of the ocean, it's truly devastating. It feels as if it's the Earth crying over what has happened here on the planet and trying to bring us all to wake up about our lives here and change many things that we're doing. And again, everything is free will here. We come here on a mission, we come here with a great destiny, but it is our free will that determines if we live up to that or not. So this is a big choice point for our planet. So what we do now, from looking at this disaster and dealing with it, determines our future. The disaster itself is simply a choice point for us.
It will be interesting to see how it plays out over time. As a Gulf Coast resident, this is a major event. It's a serious event. It could affect all of us dramatically and relatively quickly, whereas the rest of the nation, it may be a slower trickle-down sort of effect. Supposedly, what I heard as of yesterday, that there were tar balls and oil coming ashore in Gulf Shores, Alabama, and on the Florida Destin area.
Yeah, my family is in Gulf Shores, Alabama, and my beautiful little niece went to the beach last few days to try to have a few days of summer before the oil came in, as she put it. and they couldn't even play in the water because they were stepping on oil that was getting all over their feet and their skin, and so they had to come out and not play in the water, and that was on Gulf Shores, Alabama.
Yeah. So, it's already, hit there. I'm kind of surprised it hasn't hit Mississippi beaches yet.
Yeah, I've been wondering about that. I've been wondering, are the currents just taking it on a, trajectory that misses Mississippi? If so, I'm so grateful for that. I grew up having a summer home in Long Beach, Mississippi, and we were wiped out by Camille, and then those people were wiped out again by Katrina. I hope they are getting a little break here. That would be nice.
Yeah, driving down the highway there along the Gulf Coast after Katrina, I guess it was about a year, I guess, before I took my daughter and son-in-law on that road. Oh, it was quite a while after the storm, and she was shocked because there was still blankets, articles of clothing, odd debris, cotton tree tops.
Yep.
It was an eye-opener, I guess, for her, because she had been visiting me when Katrina came, and we had evacuated. She'd evacuated with me, of course. And, so she really hadn't seen any of it. And she didn't really understand why she's a diabetic and has complications, and I refused to come back home until I had her gone back to her home.
Right.
And she lived in Arizona at the time, and he was like, you really don't need to go back to New Orleans. I wasn't in a huge hurry, obviously. I wasn't going to have to be worrying about work right away because there wasn't anybody here to do anything with. Even though that where I lived had power and everything, there still wasn't potable water, there was still curfews and whatnot. I was gone for a month, and I still came back to curfews, although the water was potable real shortly after I got back. And that was, compared to this oil spill, a lot of people may disagree with me, but I think it was a much more minor event in scale-wise.
I agree.
Because this one, I think, is going to haunt us for a very long time.
Yeah, and make us make some new choices about how we live our lives here on planet Earth, and we need to make different choices. And every big change is always precipitated by a crisis. And even if you go back in your own life and look at that, you will see it's true. Humans don't seem to want to wake up and reinvent and learn until it's painful. That's one of the problems about...
Well, I think about it. I had lived in the Southwest my whole adult life, pretty much. I didn't choose to move until after my son's death, and then I got divorced. And I was, kind of looking at this sameness of life stretched out in front of me like a straight road in Kansas. Right? And I was like, ooh! I picked up and moved to New Orleans for absolutely no good reason.
And how old was your son when he died?
He was 10. He was 10.
And
so, this was a huge life event for me.
Yeah, definitely.
Everything about me changed. My son died 2 weeks later. My daughter turned 18. Then the year after that, I'm getting divorced. Granted, I was in the same job through these changes, but I'd also gone through everything I could there, except becoming some sort of a supervisor, and done it very well. But I was like, okay, this is boring now. I've done it once. I don't need to do it again. So I just, one morning, a friend that was unemployed, her and I were talking, and I said, let's move to New Orleans.
I think you came to New Orleans because you've had other lifetimes here in the city of New Orleans, and also because you sensed or felt that it was a place where you could open up to your higher self, your intuition, your true nature, and And I just want you to know that the loss of a child is the greatest loss anyone can go through, and my heart goes out to you tremendously about that. And I'll also say that having experienced many losses in my own life, that I've learned that that departed loved one is always still right there. And your son, you must know, is still right there with you and always trying to communicate with us. The quantum physicists say time and space is happening all at once. It's not linear the way we try to think of it. So, even if he's moved on to other realms, he can still be right there communicating with you. My husband crossed over when he was 30. I was 29. He died in my arms from colon cancer. And the gift of his struggle and his death was that at the moment I got to see how his death was so conscious, as he really chose his last breath based on the way he and I were communicating intuitively. I was giving him permission to go, and he took his last breath. And his spirit, I saw his soul leave his body and move out the window of the room we were in. And that was his gift to me, and it was also my complete awakening to my own intuitive gifts and to my realization that we are simply souls briefly visiting this physical realm. And those kinds of reinvention points determine our future. I changed my life completely after Paul's death, as you changed your life completely after your son's death. Your life is much more in alignment now with who you are and what you've come to do, just as mine is. Our planet is going to change direction.
When you talk about awakening, for me, I would say the process started before Josh's death. But again, talking about choosing one's point of death, my grandmother died about 9 months before my son did. Now, my grandmother, I came from a very matriarchal family, and she was the queen, okay? She ruled. And she had a major stroke, and, had a very long and slow recovery, and didn't ever make a complete recovery. And there came a point where, after she had started deteriorating again, that it was obvious that she wanted to die. She was done. Mm-hmm. She'd done what she had recovered to do, because the doctor said that her brain was essentially gone, that it had been so damaged by the stroke that there was nothing, she was a vegetable. Mm-hmm. And, there was nothing further from the truth, because a lot of facets of her personality were the same as they had always been. Some things were very different, but some were very much the same. And it was like she knew we weren't ready. Mm-hmm. We couldn't, we weren't ready to do without her ruling. Mm-hmm. She needed a phasing out period, you might say.
Yep.
And so she was with us about 6 years, 5 or 6 years after the stroke. And then it was like she gave everybody time to come see her the last couple of weeks, when it was obvious that she wasn't going to make it much longer. And then she just decided, okay, I'm ready to go, and away she went.
My husband had colon cancer for a year, and when he was first diagnosed, they gave him 2 weeks to live. And he and I weren't ready for that, because we had just recently married and were dreaming of our family and our little white picket fence life, right? And
right.
Because I'm on a path like yours, Gia, I'm on a 22 path just like you. I'm not here for the white picket fence life. And so he was, diagnosed with colon cancer, given 2 weeks to live. And we said, no, that ain't going to happen. And we not only did the conventional treatment that they offered, but we also tried many alternative kinds of treatment. And we had a year. And it was a year of slowly and painfully coming to terms with the fact that we were not going to get the future that we dreamt of having, and also of him helping me release him so that I could sit by his bed on the last day and rub his arms and say, I want you to know I'll be okay. I love you. I let you go. I want you to fly out of this body and move on to the other realms and be free. And he could peacefully exit his body that way. And I am so grateful for that awareness, that conscious death that he had. And that was my big turning point in life. And would you tell me a little more about your son?
He was actually the healthy child. My daughter was a diabetic. She had actually been in intensive care just until the day before he died. He had his tonsils out earlier in the week. Recovery was going fine. The autopsy said that nothing had gone wrong with that. They weren't real conclusive results. And so his cause of death was officially listed as codeine intoxication, even though he had the pain medication, which he could have every 4 hours. About 12 hours before, the dose was consistent with he had the correct dose 12 hours before, and so forth and so on. So as far as answers as to why, that was not something I got. So he just died in his sleep.
And did you feel that he was a special soul who was here as a gift to you?
A lot of people may think that it's hindsight, but he always felt like the borrowed child.
That's what I always
Which is a strange way to put it, but he was the borrowed child. He was the one that, even though the other one was the chronically ill one that was in and out of intensive care, had a number of close calls, over that period of time, he was the one that I just was sure that I was going to lose somehow. Mm-hmm. This wasn't something that you talked about.
Right.
It was just a fixation.
Right.
And I actually feel as though I was given a choice. I could know ahead of time, or I could just have it happen.
Right.
And, I honestly believe that I chose that I wouldn't know.
Yeah, he was your great teacher in this lifetime, and he does want you to know that his death was peaceful on his end, and that he did accomplish what he came here to do, which has a lot to do with helping you on your journey. And when I said that, you're here to do some great work, part of that work comes from remembering what he showed you, and also owning your own intuitive gifts, which have been very strong, especially since he died, and sometimes you talk yourself out of those gifts, with that left brain.
Well, yeah, you do. You question yourself.
Right.
Is it wishful thinking or is it real?
Right. Well, there's no such thing as wishful thinking. That little voice inside of us is our soul nudging us, helping us connect intuitively with the other realms. And your son is your great partner now in this reinvention work that you're about to go through in the next couple of years.
It's strange because I had always said that I had learned more from being his mother than I ever could have taught him or both kids.
Mm-hmm.
So for me, I did learn an incredible amount about love, living, and dying from him.
And our soul chooses our moment of entry, our first breath, and our soul chooses our moment of exit, our final breath. And we always accomplish our mission. So he was not tragic, just as my husband was not tragic, no matter what our culture likes to label things. They came in, did their work, enlightened people around them that they had a soul agreement to enlighten and awaken, and then they were done and they left. And I've always said for years, the best people get to leave first. It's those ones like us who are still around, who are still trying to get it right.
Yeah, the ones that have a lot of lessons to work through take
That's
more time
right.
to work through
That's
them.
Right.
Yeah. Yeah, and apparently my learning process is never going to be an easy one, and it's funny because what can they just give it to me in a book? I always learn so easily from books.
Well, honey, you only have a few little baby steps to do here, and you're going to have a whole new way of making your living. So, please do read my book, I See Your Dream Job, and please do take some of these baby steps. I'll send you some websites to look at that offer different kinds of trainings for coaching people using your own intuition. and see what makes you smile and look into it. And, you know, the dog that you picked up that injured you, every day say thank you to that dog, because it was, again, one of your soulmates helping you remember it's time to reinvent.
Yeah, so if anybody wants to adopt a dog that's changed my life, it isn't a rescue dog. It is up for adoption.
Hey, that's a powerful dog there.
Yeah, a powerful little dog. He's a little rat terrier mix, and like I said, he weighs about 15 pounds. Mm-hmm. And I've been over and scooped him up like I've scooped up a million small dogs in my life. Mm-hmm. And I had this sudden explosion in my shoulder, and I kind of went, whoa, what is this? This is not familiar. Yeah.
Well, that is such a perfect metaphor for a wake-up call, right?
The explosion in my shoulder.
The injury that comes out of nowhere for no reason and makes you have to change direction.
Yeah.
That's the soul at work. That's the soul at work going, Gia, honey, you're done with this, okay? That's the last dog you're going to pick up.
Well, that isn't necessarily true, because I have two dogs who are sworn enemies. They're never allowed together anymore. A year ago, we had a traumatic trip to an emergency clinic on a Friday evening and left with a much lighter wallet. And as a result, they are never allowed together. Even when we have them both muzzled, they're kept with space between them. One's 65 pounds and one's 25 pounds, and neither one's a bad dog. Mm-hmm. They simply both want to occupy the same throne.
Right.
And it doesn't work that way. Yeah. So I do, on occasion, have to pick up a dog. I've managed to avoid it now for several months. My partner has been very gracious in picking up the slack, and there's been a lot of picking up.
Yeah.
Because, you know, I'm right-handed, and only left one works very well. The right one, we're still going to physical therapy, and as we're speaking, it's saying, hello, here I am. Yeah. So hopefully it will start to heal much better.
Well, please tell that right arm, right hand, that you've got the message. You're going to reinvent your career, and so it doesn't need to hurt anymore.
It can go ahead and start healing, yeah. You know, because I've had some very strange problems with, like electric shock sort of things that result in dramatic shaking, and then I have this minor one that it just shakes like I was on an all-night drinking binge for the last 3 days before now. And, you know, they look at me when I'm saying it, and then my physical therapist says, well, did they screen your neck? I said, yes, they screened my neck. They can't find anything wrong with or why this is happening. But for living, that's one of the more problematic things, because even though I can't lift up much, if I even have a glass of liquid in my hand, it's not going to stay in the container if I keep the container in my hand. Yeah, so it's not a real convenient thing. I never know when it's going to happen, and there's no warning, and it doesn't thrill me much.
So let me just ask you, are you do you do a daily meditation or a daily prayer or anything like that?
I would like to say that I do it daily. I don't. I do it frequently. You know, a lot of times the best laid plans of mice and men with me, I'll get involved in something, and the next thing I know, 12 hours has passed.
Well, here's what my prescription for you would be as your personal career intuitive coach. I would say, please wake up 20 minutes earlier and sit up and try to do some healing prayer or meditation, whatever you do. And what I do is I quiet the monkey mind with I use a Buddhist Sanskrit phrase, but you can pick whatever you want, and quiet the mind, and then wash white healing light over your body, or you can use your own technique, and really send healing energy to that arm. And, you know, there are many healers out there who teach us how to heal ourselves energetically. You can even go read the books by Adam, the Dream Healer. He even has DVDs out that show you different healing visualizations you can do every day for various health problems. And they are so powerful, and I've healed so many things in myself that way.
Well, even though I would not call myself a healer by any stretch of the imagination, this is an actual true story. A number of years ago, I was making cornbread in a cast iron pan in the oven, which if anybody cooks, they know you bake cornbread at 450 degrees, which is a really hot oven.
Yeah.
So when the cornbread's done, the skillet handle is a really hot skillet handle. I tend to sometimes get very focused on what I was doing, and I was having a very energetic discussion about something lost to the mist of time. But I had a number of friends there, which is why I was baking cornbread. I opened the oven, I looked, I saw it was done, so I reached in and got it out. It didn't dawn on me I was burning my hand until I was setting the skillet on top of the stove. I forgot the pot holder. Anybody who's ever done something stupid like that, I have burnt the living tar out of my hand. This son of a gun really hurts. Everybody's looking and they're like, oh, you should go to the hospital, and it's going to blister, and this is my left hand. And I remember walking briskly around outside for several minutes trying to get past the pain, because you can't do anything when the pain is blinding you, and it was literally blinding me at that point. And then finally, I'd been taught that, you push the heat out and replace it with cold, and I thought, it's worth a shot. That's what I did. I had a number of friends with me, when I was doing it, and they just watched me. I just stood there for a second, and I just started breathing and started doing it with my eyes closed. And I'm holding my wrist with my right hand as I'm doing it. And when I got done, the red mark was gone, and so was the pain, and I never had a blister.
All right, Miss 22 Path, who's here to bring new ideas to the world. How about even just taking a Reiki class on a weekend?
Something. Hold on, though, because everybody, we're overdue for our break. Our producer is nagging me, so stay tuned, and the Donna Shades will be right back with our guest, Pat. Donna Shades. I'm your host, Gia Scott, with our guest, Sue Frederick, and once again, I would like to remind everyone to visit our website, www.exogenynetwork.com. You can sign up for the newsletter and wander around, explore it. Let me know what you think of it. There are links there to take you to blogs, Twitter, and even Facebook. And if you want to go straight to the blog, it is giascott.wordpress.com, and you find out what kinds of things I'm up to lately. If you have a question that you wish to have asked, you can email it to me at giascott@exogenynetwork.com. I'm trying real hard to monitor the emails. Cross your fingers for my computer being a little cooperative while we're doing the program tonight with Sue, and I'm trying real hard not to miss anything. So, Sue, we were talking about healing, I think, when we went to break. When I confessed to my vagary of healing my own burn. And, it's funny, I've burned myself since and never been able to do that again. Why, that particular day, it was so efficient, I don't know.
Because it was painful. That was probably one of the more painful moments of your journey, and so it brought you into great soul clarity about how to heal yourself.
I guess because I have burned my hands before. I had burned my palm of my hand. A couple years before that, I'd grabbed, there again, focused on one thing, not paying attention to another. It's the bane of my existence. I was working with a rototiller and was taking some wire that had picked up. And I reached up to grab it to keep it from tipping all the way over while I pulled off this wire that had gotten tangled on it. And I grabbed it by the manifold, which was very hot because I'd been running it for a couple of hours. And, it was several seconds before it dawned on me, you're frying your hands. The ability to focus on things sometimes is a good thing, but sometimes it's not. And I can get excessively single-minded, I guess, at times. And that was another case of doing it. And I did. I burned my hand pretty badly. I burned, actually, it was the left hand that time, too. I burned the thumb and about 3/4 of the first 3 fingers as well as the entire palm. So it was actually even a worse burn than I did on the handle of that iron skillet that day. And it was excruciatingly painful. I have to admit. Burning your hands has got to be one of the worst things that I could get done. Now, we do have some people in this virtual auditorium that would like to ask questions.
Okay.
Shall we take a shot at it?
Mm-hmm.
We have someone by the name of Sunshine Gypsy. She would like to know if she'll get her book done this year and published by next year.
Well, I need to know, in order for me to help people with their career paths, I need to know their date of birth, day, month, and year.
Okay, so Sunshine Gypsy, if you put that into the virtual auditorium, I will relay it. Or you can send it to me by instant message if you don't want everybody to know. Okay, 7/18 of 1978.
Oh, that's it? She already sent it in?
Yeah.
Okay, so say it again to me.
7/18 of 1978.
Okay. Let me see here.
The virtual auditorium, for those of you who have never joined it, it gives you a chance to interact with other people who are listening to the program, and sometimes they're actually talking about the same thing we're talking about on the air. Sometimes they're talking about all sorts of things because many of the people are very regular in coming, and it's a load of fun. So there's directions on the website, www.exogenynetwork.com, on how you too can have the fun. You can sign up for a free account with Pal Talk, and that'll get you in there. You don't have to have one of the paid accounts.
So, would you like me to talk to Sunshine here?
Yeah, go ahead.
Sunshine, you're on a Cancer 5 path on this lifetime journey, and it means that you're very open, very intuitive on your own, very had a very passionate life so far, even though you're young in your journey. Last year was a tough year for you. You let go of a lot of painful stuff, relationships, but it's all good. You've really let go of other people's expectations. You're really stepping into your power this year in 2010. So this is a year for you to rewrite that book, I think. I really feel that you've got a gift inside of you, but it's got to be a different book or a rewritten version of what you've come up with before, and this is the year to get it done. And as you do it, remember that your book has to be a very sensual journey that you share with the reader that really gives them, it's sort of like reading an Anne Rice book where you get chills and you get excited and you have a visual feast of things in the book. That's the kind of writing you're here to do, Sunshine. And I would say that in the next 8-9 years, you are going to become very successful, but again, it's going to be blossoming starting this year. So it's a new project that you start this year, 2010.
Mm-hmm. I listen to you, and you seem to do it so easily. And was this something that you had a hard time developing? My computer has crashed for those in the virtual auditorium, so when I get back in there again, I can take some more questions.
No, actually, when my husband died back in 1980, and I was so grief-stricken and so confused about my own life at that point, I was given a gift of a reading from someone who worked with numbers like I do now. And she became like a soulmate teacher for me. She took me under her wing and taught me everything about the numbers for more than 10 years. And so I did it, it's been 30 years now I've been working with the numbers and what they mean for people. But I wouldn't do it as a career path until about 10 years ago when I came out of the closet on my own and said, all right, I am an intuitive, and yes, I do work with numbers, and I can help you see your journey and move forward. And then it came through as the most effortless work I've ever done with people, and yet at the same time it was the most powerful work I've ever done to help people. And I do believe that our true gift is always the effortless thing that we can do easily and naturally. That's our true gift. And the thing that helps, it's also the thing that helps others the most.
When I hear you say effortless thing, I think about, for me, writing, whether it's poetry or prose, is literally effortless.
Mm-hmm.
It just happens.
Well,
Okay,
I said you have a gift for that, my dear.
I watch people struggling to come up with 300-word essay or article or whatever, and I'm like, 300 words? I have to whack things off. For me, it's easy, if not easier, to write as it is to talk. It's the same thing.
It's your gift.
I think with a keyboard.
Yeah. So, Gio, have you tried any other kind of writing besides this novel? Have you ever tried a novel?
Oh, I do write food articles. I keep a blog. I've done poetry.
Do you get your articles published in magazines or local publications?
They're published with Examiner.com, but I really haven't pursued having them published with a normal paper sort of publication. Mostly because, it was something I sort of did for the heck of it.
So what if you were making your living writing and, again, getting them published in publications and also turning those into the outline of your book that you would get published, and then you're also speaking and coaching clients and making good living from it? Would that make you happy?
Oh, without a doubt, because for me, it's a case of that would be doing what's effortless for me.
Well, sweetheart,
in general, I like to help people.
Yeah,
okay?
Well, that's your
a
path.
Generalization. To make somebody smile, to make something. To me, an example is there's no greater gift than when you're showing the child something, and they get it, and the lights go on, and you can see it. It's like this explosion with fireworks and everything. That's amazing. That's like standing at the Grand Canyon for the very first time. It is. It's awe-inspiring. And, sometimes you can do it with an adult, too. When you show them something and they finally get it.
They have their aha moment. Yep, that's what you are here to do, my dear. Inspirational teacher, guide. Oh, I can't wait to send you some training websites to look at so you can get a new title behind your name.
Yeah, because when we do look at ourselves, sometimes we do say, I'm going nowhere fast. It's like I'm running a marathon, but I'm on a treadmill. It's going nowhere. And, you want to get somewhere. You want to feel a sense of fulfillment. I was a prison guard for several years. That's probably the least fulfilling job I could possibly imagine.
Well, let me ask you,
I couldn't find anything positive.
Why did you take that job?
I needed a job that had benefits, including health insurance.
So it was a job taken from fear, because I want you to know that that's a fear-based choice. It says the work I do is not important. I am just going to do anything to get money.
In addition, I came from a community that was the conforming thing to do. Take a job working for the state, prison or whatever. Was I good at it? Well, yeah, but like I said, somebody said, why don't you take a job doing that again? I thought, oh my God, I'd rather take ditches.
Please, whoever said that to you, please, they are not a positive influence in your life. They are telling you to play it small, to make a fear-based choice, and that you have no talents that are extraordinary or unusual that you could make your living from.
Maybe in a small way, being good at being a correctional service officer is a good thing. But for me, it was a very unsatisfying choice. It left me feeling with a lot of negative feelings. Yeah. For one thing, imagine, I worked in a men's prison, by the way. Imagine walking into that kind of a physical situation.
You're way too intuitive to be around angry, negative people all day. You pick
Well,
up
for me, it was like walking into, because of the fact that for me, emotions tend to have an odor.
Right.
It reeked.
Well,
you can't wash it off.
Your intuitive sensitivity was, you know, there are some people who are great at that job, and they are not intuitive and sensitive, and they are here to learn a different lesson, accomplish a different mission, but that's not you.
No, I did excel at defusing potentially explosive situations, but I couldn't find enough satisfaction in that to justify it. And eventually I had to leave it simply because of the amount of stress that it was causing me. You know, the payoff I no longer regarded as worthwhile. And I went off on another journey. And I'm sure that this kind of story is not something new to you, that you've heard these kind of stories many times before.
Absolutely. So, you know, the good point is, Gia, that you manifested this radio show, which means that you knew that you had a voice and a gift to share with others. That you had.
No, it really doesn't, because I'm the accidental radio host. I wasn't going to host this show. I was going to produce this show. And to make a long story short, I had gone through 2 hosts before we'd ever aired a show. And I finally said, well, if it's going to happen, I'm going to have to do it. And originally the show was different. The intention was to focus strictly on New Orleans paranormal stuff as sort of a pro-New Orleans kind of thing. However, I found many of the people involved in the paranormal field here in New Orleans to not see any benefit in appearing on a program like this without being paid for their appearance. And, you know, I had several negative experiences, and finally I just said, you know, I'm just going to do a general sort of program with sort of a paranormal slant to it. Sort of give me more freedom to choose the topics and whatnot, and avoid some of the situations that I found myself in with the first half dozen programs or so.
But still, that was a choice. That was a choice to step up to your work.
Yeah, well, like I said, it was still kind of an accidental sideways choice.
Yeah, but there's no such thing as an accident or a coincidence. It's all on purpose.
Yeah, you know, I have a friend who often talks of synchronicity, and there's been, you know, in the beginning when she would talk of it, it was kind of a joke. And I have to admit, over the past decade, I have seen her what she terms synchronicity come to play in my life more times than I can possibly count. In fact, the first time that I was told that I was going to move to New Orleans, I laughed and I said, when pigs fly.
Well, pigs are flying.
Yep. Yeah, pigs are definitely flying because, I said, when pigs fly. And I guess it was 9 months or a year later when I actually did. But the thing was is that I was such a rural person. I love living in the absolute sticks. You know, where the only voice I heard all day was a coyote, I was just as happy as a clam. But apparently I wasn't destined for a solitary life.
Yeah, but the thing is, you're using nature as your connection to spirituality, and that's great, because that's a great way to connect to your spirituality. And you are a deeply, highly evolved spiritual soul, as I've mentioned several times on this conversation, and waking up to your higher work here. And yet, you know, just hanging out in nature and connecting to your spirituality that way is not allowed, because you're here to have your voice heard. So that's why you got pulled into New Orleans. So I'm going to give you another thing to think about here. I feel like you are still needed in New Orleans, and that you are going to go through a reinvention and end up still in New Orleans, but with a very different job title.
You know, well, that could very well be, you know, because no path is ever set in cement. You know, I have no idea. Now, it's funny, when I left where I lived in Arizona, and as I was heading out to the truck, you know, and everything, and I looked back, and I said to myself, I'm never going to go through that door again, which is a really kind of strange statement, because my mother moved into that house afterwards, but she did change the door. The doors, you know, well, door arrangement is far different than it was back then. I've had a number of people who predict that I will return to Arizona, I have to admit, Arizona's the only place I ever moved back to. But I just don't feel like that is what I'm supposed to do. And I don't care how many people who claim to be intuitive claim that I'm going to be going back to New Orleans. I just don't, or going back to Arizona, rather. I don't see that happening.
Mm-hmm.
It would be easy to go back to Arizona, which may sound strange, but, you know, it's very familiar to me. I can walk out in the desert, and everything tells me what's all going on. I have family and friends there still. And, you know, life would be much easier there. Sometimes, I guess, easy isn't always better.
Right.
And we do have another question from the virtual auditorium from Ray Marie. And her birth date is December 14th, 1969. And she wants to know if her and her husband are going to sell their house this summer.
Now, did you say 1969, like in 6?
Right, 1969, yeah.
Thank you. And what's her question?
Whether they're going to sell their house this summer.
Okay, so give me a minute to look at this here. Whoa, they're having a very powerful year. You know, 2010 is an inspired year for you, Ray. What's her name, Ray Marie?
Right, Ray Marie.
Ray Marie. Ray Marie, listen, you're having a very powerful year in 2010. So there's a lot of healing, a lot of transformation. It's bigger than selling your house. I don't know what else is going on, but there's some sort of a personal reinvention happening, a spiritual awakening happening. I wish I could talk to you live and find out your career and really talk to you about that. And I'd also say, let me look at this other thing here.
She's agreeing with you. She said, yes, sure am, and then yes again.
And, you know, the path that you're on in this lifetime, you know, it's that beautiful Sagittarian six-path sign, and that's really the path of a great teacher, a great healer, but it's really got a lot of healing gifts to it. So, for example, you might want to be a therapist. I don't know what you do for a living, but that would have been a great career choice for you, or a teacher or something like that. And in this year of transformation, it feels like you're kind of kicking that career up to a bigger level. So I'd also say, yes, your house is probably going to sell this year because there's a lot of transformation happening.
So, Ray Marie, sounds like you got a lot going on. She says she is a massage therapy. She's a certified massage therapist.
Tell her, Yahoo, that's the right career, but if she's going to take it to another level, adding in more energy, sort of intuitive work to it in the future.
Okay. That is quite interesting. You know, I think back probably my first experience with anything that I could call energy or intuitive work is years ago. I had a chiropractor that I used for myself and my kids, and he did some homeopathy. And as I watched him doing it, he had all sorts of fancy names for what he was doing, but it boiled down to it was as intuitive as any faith healer could be. As far as what he chose to prescribe for you, as far as what he chose for treatments for you.
Yeah, homeopathy.
And most of the time he was quite good at it.
Yeah, homeopathy is pure energy medicine.
He was quite good at it, although I have to admit I have trouble with leg pains at night a lot of times. It's been going on for years. And so he had me taking a mineral supplement. And I'd taken it for a couple of weeks, and then I had the worst case of PMS I could possibly imagine. I had never had much for PMS. I spent about 3 days, I wanted to commit homicide. Just give me an excuse, which was totally unlike me. And I went back, next time I saw him, I said, I had this happen. I said, I'm not sure it's related, but that's the only difference. I said, I've never had this before. He says, yeah, that's what it is. He says, that might be a side effect. I said, if I have to choose between leg pains and wanting to commit homicide, my legs aren't that bad. which is funny now, but, at the time, for somebody who's never experienced it, that kind of a emotional swing is quite traumatic. You wonder, what is going on with me? Why am I like this? And, it was very difficult for me because I did spend about 3 days where I seriously was very angry. Just, like I said, just give me a reason.
Well, homeopathic medicine, like you're talking about, is an example of science meeting energy, because it's been tested in scientific labs. It's been written about in mainstream scientific journals that homeopathy works for things like asthma. That's been well documented in, New England Journal of Medicine, etc. And yet, homeopathy, when the scientists break it down, it's nothing but a sugar tablet. But the homeopaths, what they do is they put the energy of a certain condition into this sugar and then dilute it and shake it and dilute it. And basically, all that's left is the energy imprint of a health condition in a homeopathic medicine. Now, that makes no sense to a left-brain healer, a left-brain physician, and yet they take it in the lab and test it in a scientific way, and it is valid. So that's, anyone who doesn't believe in energy or...
Well, anybody who questions the effectiveness of homeopathy, my son had severe asthma. To the point, we lived for about 18 months in Minnesota. He was continually having to take medicine. He was not growing. He was sleeping all the time, or else bouncing off the walls and spinning in between the bounces. Mm-hmm. Literally, this medicine had him so messed up, it wasn't even funny. Mm-hmm. But without it, he couldn't breathe. Mm-hmm. And he was too young for an inhaler or anything. And so I moved back to Arizona, where the agricultural chemicals seemed to irritate him more. So I moved back to northern Arizona, where there was no agriculture. He's doing much better. I started taking him to see this particular doctor. He started using homeopathy to treat his asthma. And in a very short period of time, we no longer needed any of the other medications, and he no longer had attacks.
Beautiful.
In my own case, I have migraines. And in the past, I've had migraines that have left me for a week at a time just completely non-functional. Don't turn on any lights, don't raise your voice, and just try to stay away from me. Mm-hmm. Because everything it was like axes going into my head. Forget knives stabbing, it was axes. A bright light or even a television or computer screen was just excruciating. With a homeopathic remedy, I no longer had side effects, because the side effects of the medications often were worse than the headaches, as far as I was concerned. And, all of a sudden I had something that worked, didn't have painful or horrible side effects. I didn't have to take them all the time, like a prophylactic prevention thing. I just took them when I had headaches, and over a period of time, they virtually disappeared. Mm-hmm. I don't even have a room that I can darken anymore. Mm-hmm. That was years of dealing with migraine. So, it worked for me.
Yep.
And like I said, the side effects for some of the medications were awful. One was anxiety, which to me it felt like utter paranoia. It was like somebody was sneaking up behind me all the time. Mm-hmm. Well, it happened to coincide with I was taking that medication at the same time I had just started working at the prison. So, it did become, I felt paranoid.
Right. With good reason.
Yeah, it was just a case of, between the medication and the job, something's got to give here. Mm-hmm. And, when I found out that it was medication causing this feeling like somebody's sneaking up on me all the time, mm-hmm. then, eliminate that from the equation, and I was much better, because that was miserable for me. Well, yeah, so it is. It's interesting to listen to you talking, and I never until your name was brought up as someone that would be a great guest, I had never heard of a career intuitive. And I'm like, where have y'all been hiding?
Well, I'll tell you, my book has sold thousands of copies. It's available at every bookstore and on Amazon.com, and it wakes people up to how to find their own career path using intuition and the numbers in their date of birth. And I have gotten thousands of emails from people who say it has changed their life. And if we could all have a career intuitive talk to us when we're going to college, when we're launching our career, and really look at our careers in a different way, the world would be a better place.
Yeah, I'm like, where were you when I first started looking for something?
I wish I had been there
a job.
with you. Yep.
What different choices would I have made? Would I have done many of the things that I've done? Mm-hmm. At the same time, part of me goes, you may have needed those other things for other reasons.
Everything's on purpose. It's true, and we do go through certain experiences to evolve, to have our own wake-up calls, our own wake-up moments. And I certainly look back at my journey and say, I had to take certain steps that were very painful because I needed to learn a certain lesson and really get it once and for all so that my soul would quit repeating a negative pattern. I think you learned a lot in your prison job, and you will never go back to that kind of empty work just for benefits and a paycheck.
Well, one thing I would say that I probably perfected in the prison situation was the art of observation.
That's good.
Because it's very important when you're working in a prison to be very observant about people.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
Now I can quickly assess a person's general character simply by seeing them walk across the room.
I just want you to know you're talking about intuition. That is intuition that you're talking about.
Yeah, and people may say that those things are not real and they're invalid and that you shouldn't rely on them. My intuition saved my behind an awful lot when I worked in the prison.
Yep.
Yep.
There is valid scientific research on the validity of intuition. For example, you can get Dean Radin's book. It's called Entangled Minds. He has a PhD in psychology, and his name is Dean Radin, R-A-D-I-N. He spent 30 years of his scientific career investigating the validity of, psychic phenomenon in the world by testing it in the lab. And you can go look at his over 200 published studies in mainstream scientific journals about validating ESP and precognition and all these different things we're talking about. So yes, people can say whatever they want to say about intuition, but it has even been tested in the lab.
Well, I think about it, maybe I was set up already to pay attention to intuition.
Mm-hmm.
Sort of this otherworldliness is sort of a family trait.
Yep.
Within my own family, I wasn't real weird.
Well, when you said your family was a powerful matriarchal family, I instantly got the feeling that you came from a long line of intuitives, witches, whatever you want to call them, powerful female entities who were not afraid of their own intuitive guidance. My mother's lineage was like that, from New Orleans.
Well, a lot of times, too, that intuitive nature, because of the fact that it is not always been socially acceptable, you might say.
Yep.
It's been sugar-coated.
Yep.
Even the story about a little bird told me. What are you telling somebody?
We use all these other terms to describe intuition, such as I have a hunch. You can go look up in the dictionary all these different phrases for intuition, and I have a gut feeling. And so we're always disguising the fact that our guidance really comes from this right brain part of ourselves called intuition. And in the corporate world, when you make a business decision, you can't say, well, my intuition told me I should do that. And so instead you come up with all these valid, logical reasons, even if it was your intuition that said to do it that way. Then you go and back up your choice with a bunch of logical explanations.
Yeah, we talk about career choices. It was probably in the prison that I perfected the art of battling with bull hockey, as you might say, in a G-rated version anyhow. Because of the fact that you don't want inmates to know a great deal about your personal life, but you still spend 8 hours a day, guess what, talking to inmates. You've got to talk about something. Well, I don't watch TV. So then my topics became real short. So I would just talk about whatever, and because whatever included whatever point of view, you know, with the same inmate, I may one day be pro-fundamentalist Christian, and the next day I might be pro-Muslim, and, you know, in politics I could swing any which way. And so it gave me an opportunity to learn to argue in favor of something that I might think is absolute hogwash and make it sound entirely logical. And, you know, even the storytelling tradition within my own family, you know, the tall tale is another example of taking some of the most wildly improbable things and trying to make it sound quite logical. And I have a tall tale that I tell about sand trout. And sometimes, and I told this story, it takes place in Arizona, but I would tell this to people who had grown up in Arizona. So they knew everything I was saying was absolute nonsense. And I would still be amazed when I got done, and they would say, "Is that true?" You know, when I do it like in this area, well, it's conceivable that some people here may not have any idea what the American Southwest really looks like. And by the way, anybody who's not visited it is not all sand dunes and cactus. Most of it is not, in fact. You know, and I would start off a story with all the standard clues that a storyteller will use to say this is a tall tale. And, you know, things, broad statements like, everybody knows that Arizona is all sand dunes and cactus. And when you're standing in the middle of Arizona saying this and there's not a sand dune or a cactus in sight, this should be a clue. But, you know, we give you a chance to explore the logic of no logic at all. And there is a strange kind of logic to it. But we talked, you know, about intuition. You know, I can remember stories about one time my grandmother had forgotten some mail that she wanted to mail, and she was going to be going by the post office. And in the course of her you know, errands that day, she was driving directly past the driveway to go to her house. She could have turned back at the driveway and gotten the mail. But as she approached the driveway, a voice in her head said, "Don't go home." And she went, She thought about going home anyhow. So the voice said louder, "Don't go home." So the second time she figured that she'd go ahead and listen to it. The meal wasn't that important. And so she continued on, and so they returned home later that afternoon to discover their house had been robbed.
Right, yep.
Now, you know, my grandparents were elderly at that point. If they had returned home earlier when she had passed by, it is possible, in fact, it's highly probable, that the people who were burglarizing the home were still there.
And, you know, those kinds of intuitive warnings are there for all of us all the time, and we talk ourselves out of listening. Don't you know? I mean, even to the point of when you're out walking somewhere, you turn down a street and you get a bad feeling, how many people go, "Hey, I'm tough, you know, that this is a safe street," and they just keep going, and that's where their purse gets stolen, you know. We've got to learn to listen to those feelings, those nudges from our intuition. That inner compass called intuition is never wrong.
No, I don't know how. Yeah, I have to admit, I've taken to listening to myself. There's been times, because I like to prowl the French Quarter at very odd times of the day. And, you know, New Orleans I regard as a moderately safe city if you use your sense.
Intuition.
Yeah. You know, even though I know that we made the top 10 most dangerous cities in the world, but, you know, I can't understand. I don't think we're anywhere in the league of Baghdad or some of the other places that were there. So I found that list kind of shocking. But there have been times when I've been walking down the street, and it might even still be daylight, and a voice says, cross the street.
Mm-hmm.
So I do.
That's good.
No, it might be no more than I could. There was a cobblestone out of place that I was going to trip over and hurt myself on. Mm-hmm. Who knows? I didn't see any reason to cross the street or turn down the side street or whatever the voice told me to do.
Mm-hmm.
But when I'm out walking and stuff, a lot of times I'll get strange things to do that. Mm-hmm. Sometimes on the alternate route, all of a sudden, I'll meet somebody interesting,
mm-hmm.
or I'll see something interesting.
Yep.
And maybe it wasn't to avoid something, but rather to encounter something.
Mm-hmm.
And there's nothing wrong with that either.
And it's true. I mean, that intuition is our inner compass, and not only is it steering us away from danger, but it's steering us towards the things that we're here to experience and the opportunities that we're looking for. And it's learning to navigate your life from the right brain perspective rather than the left brain logical perspective. And for us in this time of day, this culture, this is a very hard thing for us to master because we are so left brain, so logical, and yet that thinking has gotten us to here we are on, day 50 of the Gulf oil spill? I mean, give me a break. How much logical thinking does it take to create an environmental disaster? How about our gut feelings, our intuition, our spirituality, our consciousness that says life is bigger than the logical, we need to drill oil to light our kitchen light bulbs. There's just a different way, and that's what we've got to start changing our mind and looking out of our mind for different solutions.
Yeah, because we have been doing this bigger is better thing for so long now.
Mm-hmm.
For whatever reason, we keep thinking that we need these big houses and we need these big electric bills. I guess it was 2 years ago, I switched from using central air to using a window air conditioning unit. You can't live in New Orleans without air conditioning, okay? I don't know how anybody did it
I've
before.
lived there.
I'm a desert dweller. I don't do well with humidity.
Mm-hmm.
I cut my electric bill down to a third of its previous size.
Mm-hmm.
I've done everything I can to minimize, you might say, my carbon footprint.
Mm-hmm.
We try to consolidate our driving. Yes, sometimes we do take purely recreational drives.
Mm-hmm.
I justify them because I'm out looking for something, or we're out photographing something, or we have goals in mind as far as we're going to go tour something or whatever. So, we do, it's not like we never do anything fun. Mm-hmm. We've recently began to explore bicycling. It had been 25 years since I had ridden a bicycle. It's been a long 25 years. Mm-hmm. I'm going to learn to enjoy it again, but I will replace the seat that came on the bicycle originally. Learning to bicycle again, by slowing down and taking a look at our world in a different way. It's a good thing.
Yep, it's definitely a reinvention point, just like you and I were talking about earlier. It takes a crisis, whether it's in our personal life or in our planetary life, to get us to readjust and go in a better direction. It's a shame that we have to learn that way, but it seems to be the way we pay attention. So, I'd really like to see 10 years from today what we've learned from this oil spill and where we are and how we get our energy. We have a great opportunity to be a planet that harvests its solar energy, wind power, its natural energy, and uses it for fuel. And this might be the wake-up call that we need to make all those technologies viable.
Right. Well, guess what? We have run out of time. So you want to tell everybody real quick where your website is?
Yep. My book is called I See Your Dream Job by Sue Frederick. You can get it on any bookstore and on Amazon. And my website is www.careerintuitive.org, careerintuitive.org. And my name is Sue Frederick, and I teach webinars, workshops. I work with individual clients. My book will really help you if you're looking for your next step. And I'd love to hear from you, so visit my website, and you can email me from my website, careerintuitive.org.
Okay. Sue, I want to thank you very much for joining us tonight, being such an interesting guest, and helping us all out so much.
It's been a pleasure. Thank you so much, Gia.
Yeah. Folks, I hope that all of you have enjoyed the program tonight as well as I have, and that you found that it provided plenty of food for thought and more illumination for your personal journey towards truth. Join us again next week for another episode of The Dawn of Shades. Sure to be another fascinating conversation with our guest, Dr. Richard Bandler. And we'll be talking about neuro-linguistic programming. With that, we are out of time. I'm your host, G. Scott, and good night.